Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. While you're here, before we even get started, remember to subscribe and hit the little bell to be notified when I post videos. So this week is the third week of us doing our Layers of Womanhood series. And if you watched the first two videos, which I hope you did, but if you haven't, it is a series. So stop watching this one and go back and watch episodes 1 and 2. Episode 1 was the struggles of walking into womanhood. Episode 2 was the prize and not the purpose. I had some really special guests that came on and we had great dialogue and they dropped gems and gave a lot of wisdom. We started to create our web of sisterhood where we talked about women that inspire us, and you can find their Instagrams in the description always. So like I said, if you have not watched episode 1 or 2, please go back and do so. Now we're at episode 3 of the Layers of Womanhood series. And I know some of you might look at me a little strange because at the end of last week's episode, I gave you a little spoiler saying I was going to have 3 special guests. So y'all probably looking at me like, Janay, where's the guest? Because we only see you. Well, the night before I filmed what was supposed to be this week's episode entitled The Wife, the Mother, the Professional, but What About the Woman, which is a 2-part series. The night before I filmed it, I was laying in bed, journaling, doing some self-work, and I said, I feel like I'm skipping a step into this womanhood thing. We talked about the struggles of walking into womanhood. We talked about finding your purpose and knowing that when you add a partner and children and all that, that it's a prize, it's an asset. Two complete people come together and make that picture. And I was like, but I feel like I'm just skipping to wife, mother, professional, but what about the woman? And I'm like, we have not had enough time to dissect the woman. Not necessarily dissect her, but to know if we even truly love the woman, the women that we are, and do we know that we're enough? And through journaling and praying, I came up with this episode that is now week 3, and episode 3 that's entitled, Do I Fully Know Myself, and Is She Enough? I find as women that we aspire to a marriage, motherhood, and careers, but with that same vigor or that same drive that we have, we do not take that same, like I said, vigor and drive and aspiration to knowing ourselves. And if we don't fully know ourselves, if we don't fully know that the person that you look in the mirror at every day is enough, if you don't know her, one, and if two, if you don't know that she's enough, you will be no good in those other 3 roles that will now come next week, which is the wife, the mother, the professional, but what about the woman? So I had to take a break, think about it, and I'm like, this episode needs to be added in. So those of you who are looking forward to the wife, the mother, the professional, but what about the woman? I'm sorry that it's not this week. It will be next week. I filmed it already. It is absolutely amazing. But this week, we're going to focus solely on us. Not about our purpose, not about the struggles of walking into womanhood, but just about the woman. And this episode for me will be one of the most personal and vulnerable episodes I have ever done, because it is actually the place that I'm in now in my life. I've dealt with the struggles of walking into womanhood and have somewhat of a handle on them. I know my purpose. I know that I'm enough, just me on my own. I'm a complete being. But I am striving now to fully know myself and to fully know that the Janay that presents herself every day is enough. So let's dig into this episode. First of all, I want to talk about do you really know yourself? And that is a question that can be such a layered question. Do I fully know myself? Have I taken the time to get to know me like I would get to know another person in a relationship, another partner in a relationship? The questions that I ask them, have I asked myself those? Do I truly know those answers for me? And so some people might be saying, but yeah, girl, I know them because I can answer those questions when they ask me. But some of us, we know the surface level. We know, oh, we like this. We know our favorite flower. For example, my favorite flower is tulips. I know my favorite color is pink, so I can easily answer those things. I know what my favorite food is. I know my favorite movies. I can easily answer those. But to have a meaningful and a full knowing of oneself, that's just surface level. It goes so much deeper than that. So these are the questions that I have personally been asking myself from my personal journal and my personal time and my time of self work and growth and therapy. These are a combination of questions that I'm going to ask you and pose to you, that either my therapist has asked me or I have come up with myself in the quest to get to knowing who the heck Janay is. Because she is a handful, and in order for me to aspire to be the wife, the mother, and the professional, I first have to know Janay. And I have to know Janay because I want ownership and agency of my own body, of my own mind, thoughts, and feelings. So the very first question, like I said, most people would think, oh, and do I know myself, or do I fully know myself? The first thing, like I said, they go to those surface levels of my likes and dislikes, but it is so much deeper. So the first question, and we starting out the gate just going deep, y'all. So if you're not ready for this kind of deep self-work, this may not be the episode for you to watch. But if you are ready, I promise you, if you come on this journey with me of this episode, it will be worth it. And to anyone who's ever watched any of my episodes, if you never watched one all the way through, you might have thought it was too long or whatever, please, 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 I beg of you, take the time and watch this one all the way through, because I promise it will be worth it. So the first question that we're going to ask ourselves is, do we know our fears? And you're probably looking at me like, girl, yeah, I know I'm scared of, like for me, I am terrified of cockroaches. I'm pretty much terrified of anything that, insects that crawl, but cockroaches, I'm screaming, I'm hollering, I'm like, Dad, come get it. So when we think of fears, we automatically think of maybe our fear of cockroaches, or a fear of the dark, a fear of heights. All of these fears I'm naming are personal fears of mine, but they are very surface level fears. But the fears that I'm talking about and asking you, do you know, is the fears that guide your thoughts, or maybe that paralyze you from getting to that next level in your life. So for example, do you know your fears? Do you know that you have a fear of failure? If you do, what are you doing to correct it? Do you know that you have a fear of having your heart broken again because you don't know if you can handle it? Do you know that you have a fear of abandonment because maybe you were abandoned in your childhood and you're scared that you're going to be abandoned again? So do I know my fears? And then once we know your fears, do you know and can you decipher if those fears are rational fears or irrational fears? And for some of us, it may be a little bit easier to start to discover those fears or to name those fears. Like I just named 3 of mine, which I am being extremely vulnerable right now. So I named 3 of my own fears. It wasn't just vague random examples. It was fears of my own. So I can name those fears, but do I know now whether those fears are rational or irrational fears? Is it a fear that it may not never ever happen one day, but I just have it stuck in my mind? Or is it something that can happen in the near future? And once we get to the place of rationality or irrationality, do we in turn know that those fears become somewhat of our triggers? So our next question is, do you know your triggers? Can you say, girl, I know if this happened, this is going to trigger me because it happened in my childhood, or it might have happened in my teen years, or whenever it may have happened to you? Do you know your triggers? And let's pause for a moment and stay right there, because in your triggers, knowing your triggers is so, so, so important. Because if you do not know your triggers, you're going to be engaged in some type of relationship, whether it's intimate, whether it's friendship, whether it's with a family member, whether it's in the work world. You're going to be engaged in doing something, and something happens that triggers you, and the people around you are not knowing why that triggered you. And something that may sound a little crazier, you yourself don't know why all of a sudden I was upset. I was having a good day, I was going about my day, I was doing well, then all of a sudden something happens and now I'm upset, but I don't know why. The reason why you don't know why is because you don't know your triggers. Learning your triggers is work, y'all, because first it goes back to identifying those fears or dealing with things that happened in your past, because now you're triggered from it. So for me, it was definitely going back and learning my triggers. Why don't I like to feel this way? Or why, when something happens that's vaguely similar to something that happened in my past, it triggers me? Or I'm a jolly happy person, but I shut down and I go into what I like to call my little cocoon of safety, and I'm just all in myself because I am now triggered. We all know that Janay has a song called Triggered. So think about those triggers when you are going through things. So first we have to discover our fears, and then we have to discover our triggers. So fears, whether they're rational or irrational, then our triggers. So once we do that, what do we know to be our reason for living? And most people will call it your purpose. This is not something that is easily definable for everybody. Some people, like you heard Jennifer say last week, she thinks that she will be finding her purpose for the rest of her life, because sometimes your purpose can be ever changing and ever growing. So as you change and grow and develop into the best version of you, your purpose sometimes changes, grows, and develops into who that new being is. So do you essentially knows, I like to know what makes you tick, is what I like to call it. I know that I have a passion for, one, decorating and planning. I know that's what makes me tick. It makes me happy. I can do that. But when I go deeper into my purpose, like I talked about last week, I've always wanted to help people. And now I'm sitting in front of a camera showing you how to turn your pain into purpose, and that is the greatest help that I can ever do. So for me, that, like, sitting in front of this camera is what makes me tick. Thinking about the next episode, thinking about the next idea, thinking about the way I can help the next person, thinking about the way I can help myself get to the next level. So what makes you tick, so to speak? What makes you want to get up in the morning, and what motivates you to get up in the morning? For if you watch my encouragements for the journey, you know we did one this week about depression, with it being Depression Awareness Month. And one of the biggest things they tell anybody diagnosed with depression is find something that motivates you, because on those darkest days when you don't want to get out of bed, normally the thing that motivates you will sometimes spark you, and then you can get out of bed. So do you know what motivates you? And once you figure that out, are you doing things to get to those goals? So that's the next question we have to ask ourselves. Now get into the next part of knowing ourselves. Do we know our own personal boundaries? And who, child, boundaries? Sometimes it is so easy for us to set boundaries for others, but we don't know how to set them for ourselves. And I can give you a small example. If you've been following me for a while, you know in the month of July, I did a clean eating challenge, right? And I did it corporately because I needed an accountability partner. So when we talk about boundaries, simple boundaries are the things that we eat, the things that we drink, the things that we consume. Those are simple boundaries. But let's talk about boundaries that are bigger and not at surface level. Do we know that we cannot tempt ourselves to do certain things? So meaning, like, if I get close to this thing or to this person, do I need a boundary to say, hey, this is how far I can let them in for my personal good and for theirs? So do you know those personal boundaries? Do you know those things that you have to automatically put the brakes on? And have, not only knowing them, it's one thing to know them, it's one thing to know how far you can go, because most of us know it. But do we actually set the boundary and adhere to the boundary? So do you know your personal boundaries? And to take it a step further, do you know the boundaries that you have to set for others in your life so that you can protect and guard your heart, so that you won't be hurt? So do you know those boundaries? Another thing is, now we're getting deeper, and some people may or may not agree with me here, but this is something that I feel that you personally need to know. Do you know your body? Can you, when I say that, I mean it in several different instances. One, can you notice that something is off, and do I know why it's off? for me, having an autoimmune disease, I know I'm supposed to eat healthy because it helps me to feel better. Food is medicine. But when I'm not starting to feel as well, I know something is off. I'm like, oh, okay, girl, you ain't been eating right, so now your body's telling you. So do you know your body in that aspect of to know when something is off? But let's take it a step further. Do you know your body, and can you look in the mirror and look at your flaws and be okay with those? And for me, just totally honestly, that is something I am still working on. Because I talked about earlier this week on the encouragement for the journey, if you don't like something, change it. Don't complain about it, because the people around you are going to get sick of it and you're still going to be in the same position. So for me, working out is one thing that I struggle with, but I know I don't like this tummy fat and I hate looking at it in the mirror, but I have to do something about it. So even though I don't like it, can I still love myself looking in the mirror? Even though I may have stretch marks, can I still love myself? So do you know your body? Now, to go a step further, which is when I say some people may or may not agree with me here. Do you know your body sexually? And especially as women, most of the time, and especially growing up in the church, when it comes to sex and intimacy, we're always taught, don't do it till you're married. And then after that, sometimes as women, we're kind of told, especially once you get married, don't deny your husband, don't do this. So sometimes it feels like sex is not made for us when God made it as a gift for everybody to enjoy, whether it's male or female. So, do you know your bodies? Do you know your pleasure centers? And it doesn't just have to be sexual pleasure centers, but do you know the things that make you happy? And I need my women to understand that we as women, alluded to it earlier, that we have ownership and agency over our own bodies. So we need to know our bodies, because when we have partners and we want partners to come in, how can we tell them anything about us, whether it be from the small things of likes and dislikes to, hey, these are my fears, these might be rational, and the irrational ones I'm working on. These are my triggers. This is what motivates me or makes me tick. This is my purpose. These are the flaws of my body, whether it's stretch marks, whether some women, you may know this, you may have one boob that's bigger than the other, whatever it is. These are my flaws. I know my flaws. I accept my flaws, and I'm comfortable with them. And like I said, to take it that step further, if you don't know yourself, but especially if you don't know your body in a sexual way, you can never expect a partner to. So that is the full knowing of yourself in the aspect in which on my journey I am on now. I'm starting to know, and in my quest to knowing myself, I'm learning a lot, but there's still a lot that I have to learn and that I'm willing to put the work in to learn. I'm willing to ask myself the difficult questions. I'm willing to examine myself. And when I say examine, I mean inwardly examine myself and say, okay, girl, these you may have to work on. These flaws and faults you may have to work on. You will have to work on, so you can get to the best version of yourself. These are my triggers, so I know that if something happens, it may bring me back there, but I'm able to verbalize that. I know it for myself, but when you start talking about partner, I'm able to verbalize it to my partner and say, hey, these are the things that trigger me. Yes, I am working on them, but if something happens in this area and you see me change, I am triggered. And another important thing that I forgot to say when we're talking about triggers, do you know how to bring yourself down after you're triggered? Because if you can't calm yourself down after you triggered, nobody else can. If you don't know the ways to center yourself and get yourself back balanced mentally, physically, emotionally, no one else can. You are the answer key in the back of the book. So whatever your name is, my name is Janay Carolyn Edmonds. If the book is named Janay Carolyn Edmonds and there's questions and problems in it, the answer key lies within me. But I have to do the work to find the answers in order to create the key. And I'm going to say that one more time. If the book is Janay Carolyn Edmonds, whoever's watching me, whatever your name is, put your name in that place. The book is your name. And the answer key to the book lies within you. The answer key that's in the back of most books to the questions, and maybe it's like a math problem or whatever. The answer key is always, most of the time, in the back of the book. Very seldomly it's not. But am I willing to do the work to find the answers, then to create the key? And that's where you have to be willing to do the work. That's where you have to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. That's where you have to be willing to address the trauma, the abandonment, whatever it is. You have to be willing to address it to get to that full knowing of yourself, so you can know how to calm yourself down once you're triggered, so you can decipher your rational and irrational fears, so you can know your purpose and discover your purpose, so you can know your body, so you can know your body sexually, so you can know what pleases you and what pleasure you get. You have the answers, but you have to do the work to find them. So we've covered the first question: do I fully know myself? And as I was playing around with the idea of whether I was going to do this episode or not, because I legitimately, like y'all always know, I tell y'all I have my little episode notes, so everything I'm talking to y'all about, which I probably can't see because the camera didn't focus, I have an outline. And I was still so unsure of myself. So that's another thing about doubting yourself. That's the part of my journey that I am on, and I'm working so hard on, about trusting my own voice. Do you trust your own voice? The voice that's inside of you, that's guiding you. And as Christians, most of the time we like to say the Holy Spirit, but the voice that's inside of you that no one else hears, that you hear in your head, can you trust that voice? And the only way you will be able to trust that voice is if you do the work to find the answers and do the work to become the best version of yourself. And as you constantly do the work, you will find it easier to trust the voice inside of you. So as I was writing this episode out, and I like legit wrote all my ideas down in under 20 minutes, and I'm like, I know this episode is needed. And I was going through it with the ladies who's on the episode, the wife, the mother, the professional, and one of them said to me, she said, Janay, I'm a 40-year-old woman and I still don't fully know myself. And she gave a good point. She said, I don't fully know myself because I'm constantly evolving. And so I want you to know that I need you to, when I tell you these things, is because I need you to have a core knowing or learning of yourself. I need you to know yourself at your core. As you grow and evolve, it's just a different, it's a better person, should I say, than what you were at your core base level. So of course, as life go on, I always say the only time you should stop evolving is when they're saying ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's the only time you should stop evolving. But as you constantly evolve, you have to constantly do the work to know yourself. And that brings me into my next question. Do I know myself? Do I fully know myself? And is she enough? And is she enough? I'm going to repeat it again. And is she enough? One of the ladies that I told y'all that inspires me, her name is Melissa Fredericks, but on all social media platforms, her name is Ms. Kev on Stage. She discussed how she had to do these campaigns to build herself up, to build the confidence. And she said, how did she say it? To know that I am enough without change. Do you know that you're enough without change? And all that simply means, and what she said it means is, yes, you should always keep evolving. Yes, you should always try to become a better version of yourself. But whatever state that you're in, do you know that Janay, or whatever your name is enough? So whether I was in the state that I was in almost 2 years ago before I started therapy, or evolved into the person I am now, that person then was enough, that person then was worthy, and this person now is just as worthy, if not even more, because I've done the work to become the better person. So do I know that that person is enough? And like I said, as women, we are multi-dimensional beings. I always like to say, I don't think that we're just a one-dimensional being. If you go back to the first week, I gave a quote that is kind of like one of my quotes that I live by, that you should be a classy lady with a little bit of hood and a whole lot of God. And that is me wrapped up in the quote. So we're not just one-dimensional beings. And as beings, we have so much to offer. And I need my women right now to just sit and think of all of the things that you have to offer. And when I say that, I don't just mean your body and sexually. That is not even a thought. but what you have to offer, the person that you are, the attributes that make you who you are. When I'm talking about these attributes, I'm not talking about like the education that we pile on top of who we already are, and the degrees and the businesses. I'm talking about who you are at your core. You are enough. Who God made you to be. You are enough. Some of us have the gift of being nurturers and being overly nurturing. Some of us have the gift of being overly compassionate and caring. Whatever gift that God has placed down on the inside of you, that makes you so special, and that makes you even more worthy. And I need you to know that that person is enough. And I need you to know, once you start adding all the other things, I love seeing my sisters get their degrees and start their businesses and start careers. That adds to your worth. But before you amass all of those things, you have to know that the person that you are at your core, the person that came out your mother's womb, that you're enough. If you do not know that you're enough and you try to seek that validation within a partner, you will never ever succeed at seeking the validation, and most of the time the relationship won't succeed. Which is why I knew I had to do this episode before I dubbed that before well this episode had to come out before the last two-part series of this two-part episode of this series. I knew that this episode had to come out first, because if you try to seek that validation from a partner, if you try to seek the finding yourself in the partner, you will never succeed at that, because you have to know yourself in order for the partner to know you. You will never succeed at trying to complete yourself in a partner. You will always find that either you will be left still feeling like you did, incomplete, not worthy, broken, or the relationship won't succeed, because it takes two whole people to come together. And the slim chance that the relationship does succeed, you will have so much turmoil, because you're trying to constantly find what you should have already found in yourself in someone else. Like I said, you have the answer. You are the answer key, but you have to do the work within yourself to be able to fill out the answer key. So you have to know that you can't seek that validation in anyone else. You have to know that it takes no one else to complete you. Jennifer said last week, we're complete on our own. On our own. When somebody else comes, they're the icing on top of the cake, or the cherry on top of the sundae. You have to know that by yourself, you're whole and complete, and somebody else that comes along, you're their prize just as they're yours. So you cannot seek that validation in anyone else. So in order for you to know that you're enough, in order for you to fully know yourself, you have to do the work. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no ways around it. There's no shortcuts to it. It is strenuous work. I talked about that in the encouragement for the journey, that self-work can be extremely strenuous. It can be draining, because you're dealing with yourself and you're trying to become the best version of you. So that is hard work, but it is so rewarding. So my last few questions for you, things that I want to tell you, is number one, all of the questions that I pose to you, I cannot answer them for you, and I cannot do the work. I can only spark you or give you the thoughts or the questions to ask yourself. But for you to truly get those answers, I can't give them to you, because I don't know you. Child, I'm still trying to know myself fully. So you have to answer those questions. I cannot answer them for you. But to truthfully answer those questions, you have to be willing to be the most vulnerable you've ever been. You have to be willing to be the most honest you've ever been with yourself. You have to be willing to strip down every facade, every mask that you put on to public and society. Because at the end of the day, once you go home and you strip and you're by yourself, those facades automatically come down. That mask automatically comes down. And when you looking in the mirror, you seeing the mirror is reflecting only what is put in front of it. So you're seeing yourself. So you have to be willing to strip down every facade that you've ever put up to people. Every, oh, I'm the strong person, or oh, I have no weaknesses, or oh, I'm Miss Perfect. You have to be willing to strip down every facade to answer these questions truthfully, then to do the work. And you have to be willing to sometimes stand in a mirror and point out a flaw that you don't like, but tell myself that I'm going to love this. And every day you have to say, okay, I shared with y'all before, I have some gaps in a few of my teeth, and I have to stand in the mirror sometimes and not hide my smile and say, okay, even with that, you're still enough, you're still beautiful, you're still worth it. So whatever flaws you have to be willing to look in the mirror and tell yourself, even with this, I am still enough. Even with this, I am still worthy. And I don't care how long you have to say it to yourself. As I told you before, Melissa Fredericks, Miss Kev on Stage, said she can't even remember how long the process took, but she knows she told herself it every day. It is living in a space of consciousness and in a space of intentionality like you never have before, in order to know yourself and know that you're enough. You have to be conscious to do the work, and you have to do the work intentionally. You have to stand in front of that mirror every day intentionally to say, I am enough. So you have to be willing to strip down those facades, and you have to be willing to love the real you. I'm gonna say that again. You have to be willing to love the real you. And that was so hard for me for so long. But I think God confirmed that this episode was supposed to go before the other one. Because today my mom and I were in the store. And as we were in the store, we had this extremely friendly cashier. He was like, his vibes and energy, y'all know I always say vibes and energy is everything to me, was amazing. And we were talking about some stuff, and he said, but you don't look like it, girl, because you are beautiful with your pretty chocolate self. And once we got home, I said thank you. But once we got home, I told my mom, I said, Ma, I know try this again. Ma, I know now that I am growing in my journey to truly loving who Janay is. And she said, why do you say that? And I said, you see how he told me with my pretty chocolate self? Normally I would have been offended by that. Because in the African American community, we all know that we deal with colorism, and sometimes we deal with the light is right. And I kind of grew up in the era that you seen the light skinned girls all the time, but the darker skinned ones you really didn't see. And I always wanted to be lighter. I always wanted to be lighter. And I used to hate the fact that I wasn't, to the point that I used to filter pictures to make myself look lighter. I used to buy lighter makeup to make myself look lighter because I wanted to be lighter. And it wasn't until I started to truly know myself and fall in love with myself and know that I'm enough, that it's like, child, you can't tell me nothing about this melanated skin now because I love it. And to take it even a step further, in every other episode that you will see, including the ones that will come out next week and the week after, I had on a wig, so you seen the straight hair. This curly, kinky 4C hair that you see on my head, I used to despise it. Because I've always heard, girl, you don't have good hair. Because my mom had the really pretty, as soon as it hits water, it curls up. Versus I had the, as soon as it hits water, it shrinks up and tightens up, and you're breaking combs and you're doing all of this. So, and now that I'm sitting here in this moment, I didn't even realize, I just told my mama I just wanted to wear my natural hair last week. Not even realizing that I was going to film an episode about loving myself enough to wear my natural hair. So I know now that I'm in a part of my journey that I'm loving the real me. Yes, I may have makeup on, but it is my shade. And yes, now I can wear my hair. I can be proud of my melanated skin. I can just love the real me. So ladies, when I say loving the real you, love the you at night, that once the lashes come off, the makeup come off, the wig come off, if you in your set it off braids, as I call them, that goes under your wig, you have to love that you as much as you love the you that normally we present to social media with the makeup and the dressed up and the lashes and the wig and everything else. We have to love the stripped down version of ourselves just as much, or if not more, than we love the put together version of ourselves. So now this is where your real work begins. And if you haven't started this work, this is where it begins. If you have started it and you're like me, this is where the real work continues. Like I said, I cannot answer these questions for yourself, for you. Only you can answer them for yourself. But I can promise you that this process, it will not happen overnight. I've been on this journey for a while now. This was a journey that I've been on before therapy, but even more since then. So this is a journey that I've been on for a while. The Janay that's constantly evolving. I'm constantly finding new things that I love about myself. I'm constantly finding new ways to love myself and show myself love. And I'm constantly seeing that, girl, you doing it. Whether it's getting my degree, starting my business, branding myself, that adds on to the core of me that's already enough and that's already worthy. It adds on and make me even worthier. So I need you to know that. So like I said, this is where the real work begins. I cannot do it for you, and no, it does not happen overnight. But this journey of being your authentic self, loving your authentic self, and knowing your authentic self just requires you to show up every day, to be conscious, to be intentional, and to do the work. And I promise, once you get to a certain space on this journey, you're going to look back and be like, wow, I really used to think or feel that way. And that moment happened for me today. So I need you to be as vulnerable, as truthful, honest, transparent as you've ever been with yourself. But I also need you to be gentle with yourself. And I find sometimes in self-work, we're not gentle with ourselves because we'll have a good day and then the next day we might not have a so good day. And I can attest to that. Monday, I had my afro, I had my lashes on, I was feeling myself, nobody couldn't tell me nothing. Tuesday, I wasn't feeling good, and I wasn't that same girl who was out here like, you can't tell me nothing. So it will vary from day to day, but what you have to make a commitment to is showing up every day and making a conscious and intentional decision to love yourself in whatever state you find yourself in. So like I said, I cannot do it for you. You have to be willing to strip down the facade. You have to be willing to know it is a process and it won't happen overnight. But once you're willing to know all of those things and you're willing to do the work, the woman that you will be, the better woman that you will be, the best version of yourself that will show up will be so amazing. You will show up with a knowing of yourself, and you will show up knowing that the person that I now know, she is fully worthy. She is enough. She will not take less than what she deserves because now I know that I am enough. So we've gotten to the end of this episode. I hope and my greatest desire, like I said, I pray that you watched it fully through, and I pray that the journey that I am on to self-love and to knowing myself and to knowing that she is enough and she is worthy, I pray that that journey begins to unfold for you, and you begin to take that journey and you begin to do that work, because the woman that you will be after, or I can't even say after, during doing that work, you will look in the mirror and she will have this glow about her and this air of confidence about her, and she will be the woman that's on the movies that walk in and know that, quote unquote, she kind of it. You know, she will know that she's it. She won't be confident. She won't be cocky, but she will be confident. And she will love herself and know that she's enough, and she will not accept anything less. And so, you know, I told you every episode is about building a web of sisterhood. So this week, the woman that I want to feature, the woman that inspires me, the woman that is actually pushing me to eat healthier, never met her in my life, most of us call her our internet auntie or mama, is Mrs. Tabitha Brown. I discovered her probably about 5 to 6 months ago. And she was talking about how we all know she's vegan, and how her journey to becoming vegan, and her autoimmune diseases that she had. And she inspired me to actually do the 21-day clean eating challenge. And then, of course, we all watch her. We know she does inspirational videos. But the thing I love the most about Miss Tabitha is she is her complete and full self. She talked about her journey to loving herself, how when she first went to LA, because she's from the South and she has a Southern accent, she would tone down her accent, and most people didn't know she had it. She has a beautiful, beautiful crown of natural hair that she calls Donna. And Donna, baby, is hair goals, but she was straight and Donna. And she had to get to a journey that she fully knew and loved the real Tab. And now she's able to be her total and complete self. And now she's able to help people through healthy eating, like she's helped me. Miss Tab, I ain't all the way there. Auntie Tab, as I normally call you. I'm not all the way there with being fully vegan, but I am being healthier and making healthier choices. So if you're trying to be healthy, make healthier food choices, if you're on your vegan journey, or if you're just need someone to encourage you, she encourages us all, and she encapsulated in love is just the tone of her voice, the words that she chooses to use, her cadence, everything, it is just covered in love, and it feels like a big old hug. And Tab, I don't even know if you gonna see this, girl, but you have definitely made an impression on me to be myself, to love me. I haven't named my natural hair yet. I don't know what it's going to be named, but you have made me love the hair that's on my head, the person that I am, and I'm striving to be a better person, especially in my eating habits, because of you. And I always make sure that, one, I mind my business and I do what I want because it's my business. And I always make sure that I have a good day. But if I don't go ruin anybody else's. And that's because of you. My mom and I literally tell each other that every night now, because I even put her on you and she loves you. So if anybody is looking for any inspiration or help on your vegan food journey, please follow Tab on Instagram. I think it's I am Tabitha Brown, but it will definitely be linked in the description. We're at the end of this episode. I am so thankful that you have came along with me on this journey to self-knowing and to knowing that you're worthy. Now, next week, which is a two-part episode, is the wife, the mother, the professional, but what about the woman? And y'all, if y'all follow me on social media, I put up a post on this past Saturday that I was just in awe, because that episode, I was just a moderator because I'm neither of those things, working on the professional aspect, but I'm not a wife or a mother yet. But the wisdom that these three women sit and dropped, the gems, the way that they told their truth so authentically and so vulnerably was just amazing. The sisterhood, even through the tears that we shared in the episode, is so worth it. So for all my women out there, if you are wives, mothers, and professionals, and to people who are like me, who may be working on the professional side but you're not a wife or a mother yet, please do yourself a favor and watch this two-part episode next week and the week after, because the knowledge and information that and the wisdom that they gave on last week, I have now taken it, a lot of it, even though I have the video, written it down and will work on it, so when I do get to those stages, I'm better equipped. And one of the ladies, she said, when I got married, Janay, I didn't have a playbook or a book that says how to be the perfect wife. And she said that early in the episode, and once we got to the end of it, I said, you said you didn't have a playbook or how to be the perfect wife, but y'all three ladies today sit here and talked about just how to be an authentic woman who may not show up as perfect, who may show up as tired, who may show up as frustrated, happy, whatever, but how to still be true to yourself. So do yourself a favor. Do not miss that episode. And in order for you not to miss any of my episodes, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get my subscribers up. So remember to subscribe and to click the bell so you can be notified when I post new videos. Remember to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Child, I'm still struggling with Twitter, but we gonna get there. Follow me on all social media platforms. The information will be in the description. And again, the information for Auntie Tab will be in the description so you can follow her. Come back next week and the week after. This series is, I'm still just a little flabbergasted that I pulled this off, because child, it was almost canceled, but I'm so thankful that it wasn't. I made new relationships, formed new bonds, and I'm a better woman because of the Layers of Womanhood series, and I hope you are becoming a better woman because of it too. So as I always say, thank you for watching this episode, and thank you for coming along with me on my journey as we turn pain into purpose. Bye!